Everybody's chasing the next model like it's the finish line, but I can promise you it's not the finish line. In 2026, the winners are not going to be the teams with the flashiest demos and not teams from Silicon Valley, to be honest. They're going to be the teams that can build the systems that don't lie, do not drift, and don't bankrupt businesses when nobody's looking. Today, I want to talk about the state of artificial intelligence beginning for January 2026. So, not the hype, but sticking to the engineering reality and the business outcomes. Here is the shift in mindset in one sentence for 2026. We have officially moved away from engineers building great models to needing to understand how to build reliable systems. And what changes is who matters. It changes what breaks. It changes what good and great really look like. I'm going to be presenting a deck around the three forces that I'm saying are really needing to lock together as the gears, right? So this means the rules, meaning the regulations, the engine, meaning the data or the infrastructure, and the intelligence, meaning the agents that have become prominent in the work now. When these gears are aligned, it's clear you get autonomy, you get trust, you get great work. When they are not, you're going to get expensive chaos for businesses. I'm also going to show you one silent failure, the $1 million chunking mistake that turns a helpful internal assistant into a liability generator for any business. It's just a really quick example. So before we really zoom in on what we're talking about, let's get a landscape check here for how the six engineering forces have really come to power. So there's regulated artificial intelligence. There's the EU AI Act that has started to enforce transparency, high risk rules that have started to take effect, but more certainly taking effect going into 2026. Um, the era of when we will of figuring it out later is officially over. So you have moved into the second area quickly, where agentic workflows have gone from chat based simple conversations to autonomous action, right? So really observing something, reasoning on it, and being able to log and share that information, and then of course providing actionable work, right? So really acting on what has been found. Third, there's active data engineering, right? Metadata was always a great word to use as a interview key phrase, but that's not just paperwork anymore, right? Metadata is how a system knows what is true, what is current, and what's safe to use. Fourth is going to be a vector database situation, or understanding vector first infrastructure really. So vector databases are becoming non-negotiable, and the memory backbone of a workflow or an agent is really going to become the backbone of a company or an enterprise. Fifth is really the intelligent observability work, where essentially you got to have AI watching AI at this point, because humans cannot supervise machine systems at human speed, right? You need to do it at machine speed with dashboards and hope. That's just not going to work anymore. Six, you have the physical shift, right? And I'm not talking robotics. I'm talking specifically around the infrastructure of AI. It's not just code anymore, right? It's not only code. It's the power associated, the cooling associated. It's the copper. It's the trade and logistics. It's really the essential knowledge that the cloud still lives very much on Earth. So when you hear people talk about talent wars, understand what's really happening. There's not only a bottleneck on wonderful engineers for AI specifically, data engineering AIs is still shorted. There's still a huge shortage on that. There's still a wonderful need for data engineers. The bottleneck is really in the physical build out that keeps all these systems alive, which you have heard numerous stories on, but even what's happening at Davos now, for the World Economic Forum. It's been a discussion about how much power is going to be associated and how many different numbers economically will start to change because of artificial intelligence. So let's take a look at the rules of the road that have started to define themselves pretty clearly. In 2026, enforcement is the point. It's not a theory, it's not blog posts, and it's certainly not panels, right? It's enforcement. The EU AI Act puts a clock on transparency. Companies must publish public summaries of training data sources. They must respect copyright opt outs. They must label synthetic content, including watermarking requirements. Here's why this matters, even if you're not in Europe, because supply chains, vendors, and platforms are global. If you have an enterprise that touches EU markets, citizens from the EU, or uses vendors that do, the compliance posture travels. Regulation becomes architecture, documentation becomes deployment, and the cost of non compliance is not just a fine, it is operational paralysis, it is production delays, it is trust erosion from your customers that you most certainly will never get back. Let's take a look at that chunking problem we talked about, right? In the old world, from the ETL builds and details, and I say old world with a laughable situation, right? Like we're talking 2019, right? Maybe 2020, if we're being honest. In the old world, ETL failures were pretty loud, right? So a pipeline broke, a dashboard went blank, a 404 error showed up. I got plenty of emails, phone calls, text messages, especially before the day began, in the middle of the night if you're a database developer or an admin. But engineers were called to fix things that broke, right? So it's pretty much a loud situation from old world rules. So if you're working at a company that still runs on old world rules, and this is what you do for, selling what you do and how you make money as a business, you may still be living this life for a while. But it's pretty clear it is changing, right? In the agentic world, the opposite of the old world, failures can be silent. Everything could still be running, right? The database could have returned the perfect, well, it could have returned a chunk, right? The model responds with perfect grammar, and the system that you have it attached to is still logging a success. The answer that ultimately came out from the workflow could and most likely will be wrong without proper setup. And this is what you could consider the silent failure problem, but it is a pretty deadly issue for businesses across the world. This means it's not reliable. It means it's just not going to pass the test or cut it, right? And this is the cleanest way to see it as a simple HR policy, right? Here's the HR policy. An employee, or let's say all employees, are eligible for a bonus at a specific company. And if they've worked at that company for more than 1 year, they get it. However, if they are in sales, they are eligible immediately, right? And so, what does that mean? The policy is not complicated. I think that's pretty clear. The policy is not complicated, but the word however here is doing a lot of work. It is the bridge between truth and truth because they're both true. Now, watch what happens when a naive pipeline cuts that bridge. You'll have an issue where the model could result in chunk B here, and it is seeing, however, as part of a logic mistake according to company policy. So, context, the word however was severed, right? And so immediately to the model, everyone is eligible. That's $1 million mistake. A lazy ingestion pipeline chunks by character count or token count. It slices text because it's efficient, but semantic meaning does not live in fixed boundaries, right? So the pipeline produces two chunks. Chunk one, employees are eligible for a bonus only if they've worked at the company for more than a year. However, if they are in sale, chunk two, the sales department, they are eligible immediately. Now look back here at chunk two again, right? Chunk B, chunk two, it has the high value keywords, sales, eligible immediately. A vector search system is not looking for truth. It is looking for similarity. So when a new hire asks, I just joined sales, do I get a bonus? The retriever grabs chunk B or chunk two here. And when the agent does what agents do, it believes what it retrieves. It does not have tribal knowledge. It does not ask a colleague. It does not pause and say, this is incomplete. It answers confidently, right? And if the agent is wired to act, it might execute, approve, refund, provision, close. It's over. This is why I say data engineering is now model engineering, because you're not just moving the data, you're shaping the boundaries of what the agent can do. This doesn't fall strictly in data science work, right? In 2020, a bad pipeline meant a dashboard does not load. In 2026, a bad pipeline means autonomous systems hallucinate and then still act if you don't have the proper configs or failsafes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about architecture and what it means to have the right mental model from hype to hard won maturity, right? Um, from this particular idea of a center of excellence or a platform that you might consider that, you have a couple different areas of domain that would be considered and used, right? So IT does not act as an enabler, or they do act as an enabler. I apologize. Not a bottleneck, right? And sales kind of has a very similar situation where they are able to gain more understanding of data products and how to use those things. And then, of course, storage and compute, and those things are intertwined or kind of given back and forth between the center of excellence and your actual domain situation or expert that is there, right? So the reality is that centralized plumbing, storage, aka compute, whatever, with decentralized last mile innovation is very, very helpful and can get you quite a few results. Okay, so when it comes to the memory of AI and mastering your vector databases, this is going to be some interesting stuff, right? I mean, it's not a toy, it's not a feature. This is really where your enterprise knowledge goes to become retrievable at machine speed, right? And once you accept that, your skill level is going to change and your ability to influence your company and profit is also going to change. It's going to go up. You need to understand what it means to have hybrid search, keyword plus vector, because pure semantic similarity is just not enough, right? You need to understand dimensionality, reduction, because embedding size and index design show up as latency and cost. Oh my gosh, the cost is enough. You need to understand literally the approximate nearest neighbor trade offs, right? What does that mean statistically and when to enact it in your pipelines? Because under your particular load, you will trade recall for speed, whether you admit that or not. And that frustration scaled out for your company and your workers could be awful. If your team treats retrieval as an afterthought, your agent will behave like a confident amnesiac, right? So let's talk about the solution, which I consider to be really the evolution between solving context and precision and the hierarchical re-ranker retrieval situation that is very useful. So the fix is not a better model, although Silicon Valley and Wall Street will tell you that it is. The solution is not a better model. The fix is a change in the retrieval architecture, right? You can solve context versus precision with hierarchical retrieval. Here's the core idea, right? Index small chunks of search, but when you retrieve, you do not feed the model the small chunk alone. Okay, you retrieve the needle, then you feed the model the haystack, right? Parent-child indexing, late chunking, hierarchical re-ranker retrieval. In practice, it looks like this. You break documents into sequence, level, or small semantic units for embedding, right? You retrieve a short list. You re-rank it to select the best candidates. Then you map each candidate to its parent section. The full paragraph or a policy block. That full block goes into the model context window. Now, the however comes into exception or comes with the exception here. The rule comes with the carve out. Logic stays intact. This is context engineering. Okay. And if your organization is still using naive splitters, you're not building agentic systems. You're building liabilities with good marketing, right? Um, so at this point, somebody always asks, should we fine tune instead, Ernest? The answer is stop treating this like a religion. Okay. Fine tuning is for behavior, style, tone, domain vocabulary, instruction following. RAG or RAG is for knowledge, factual accuracy, dynamic sources, citations, current state. To be honest, that's about 90% of what the models are for and why people want them in business. The 2026 verdict is using both is just fine. Fine tune so you have the model behaving like it works at your company. Use RAG so it knows that your company knows what it knows today and it's 100% accurate about it. Ernest knows the address for the company, so does the agent because they pull it from the same place. So let's talk about the part that helps us decide whether this stays alive in production or not. And what we can do to start handling observability, right? Black box models require deep visibility because they do not crash, they simply lie or hallucinate. And so you're going to need to work on telemetry for the whole chain, right? Retriever, re-ranker, generator, tool calls, agent actions. Open telemetry is becoming the common language here. And the trend is observability as code. Version controlled agents, version controlled guardrails, not tribal knowledge, not screenshots in a wiki. And you monitor two things at the same time: reliability, meaning hallucination risk and drift, and cost, meaning token spend and GPU burn. So in 2026, financial ops is not just cloud cost management. It is the economics of intelligence, cost per succession inference. Um, Oops, sorry, let me go back here. And cost per safe action. That is the metric that matters the most, right? Let me move into closing here and talk about two truths and one mandate that I see as being super relevant for your work in 2026 as an engineer, right? Um, First, the physical shift is certainly real, right? The boom in data centers is driving demand for trades. Electricians, HVAC, plumbers, welders, influencer that I follow and have mad respect for, David Shapiro, gave big um, information on this particular section of his work on post labor economics. So electricians, HVAC, plumbers, welders. This has already seen the boom from a lot of the things that people in economics have called out. The workforce story is not about replacing office work. It's about how building the infrastructure that makes AI possible is happening today. So truth two, success in 2026 is not about having the smartest model. It's about having the most reliable, compliant, integrated system. So here's the mandate, right? On Monday morning, you need to audit your next ingestion and retrieval pipeline. You need to audit for compliance. You need to be worried about mapping training data sources and implementing copyright opt-out checks. You need to literally start worrying about architecting for context. You need to move away from the naive chunking and you need to move to the hierarchical retrieval, right? You need to adopt hybrid search and start treating vector memory as a first class layer. You need to also worry about deploying with discipline. Pilot agentic workflows internally, right? Use parameter efficient fine tuning where it makes sense. Don't overkill and monitor your reputation like your life depends on it, like your business depends on it, because it does, right? It does. Open telemetry across Gen AI stack. Open telemetry, right? If you've learned nothing else from me today, let's take that away from that, okay? Cost controls tied to quality controls will also be important. If you're still chunking blindly and you're not building autonomy, you're building a machine that can confidently misunderstand you at scale, right? That is the state of artificial intelligence in 2026. Engineering autonomy, engineering trust. Okay. If you want a checklist and you're in a reference implementation of hierarchical retrieval, drop chunking into the comments and I will share the format that we use at the Data Experts. But you're also welcome to, leave a comment, tap in, and visit us at our website or follow me on TikTok, right? Follow me on TikTok, check out some of the other content and the thoughts that I post, and follow me on Substack as well. There's a Substack I just posted. We have a blog on the website following up on this today and talking about the state of artificial intelligence. But yeah, until next time, thanks.